party, could be one or two person. And normally when we say business negotiation, so it would involve agreement, and there is an intention to pay. There's an intention of an exchange in money, most commonly. Sometimes an intention to exchange could be anything that you agreed to with another party. With different needs and goals, discuss an issue to find a mutual acceptable solution in business. So it has to be more than two people in order for you to have an agreement. In business, negotiation skills are important in both informal day-to-day interaction and formal transactions, such as negotiating conditions of sale, lease, service, delivery, and other legal contracts. So these two parties, there's always one thing that's common if you have a goal. So you agree onto something, could be sale, could be a lease when, for example, you're a small vendor and you're trying to get a space in a certain mall. Then you talk to the owner of the building, then you'll have an agreement. Always involve a negotiable instrument, and most of the time this instrument is a signed document that promises a sum of payment to a specified person on the signing. So, can contribute significantly to business success. Yes. In order for that negotiation to be successful, both parties will have to agree to each other. Even in our real life, day-to-day activity, we might not be aware all the time, but we always practice negotiation. And in a simple, let's say you go to a restaurant and you speak to a cashier, it might be informal, but that cashier and you in a way have an agreement that if this cashier will order your food, then you agree to pay for the food. So, but in business in general, if you're talking about dealing with huge third-party people, such as big players in the business industry, it has to be more formal. You have to really have a certain skill in order for you to convince the other party to agree to your terms and conditions that you want to be included in your contract. And a contract is not usually, when this type of things happen, it needs to be formal. So a lot of the times it has to be like notarized by an attorney to make it a public instrument. So deliver lasting quality solution rather than poor short-term solution that do not satisfy the needs of either party. So it really depends on what is your intention if you get into a negotiation with a certain party or individual. So it depends why you want an agreement with that person. But in our day-to-day life, we've always been doing this. We might not be aware that that is in a way a form of a negotiation. Then we go to the next. There's no negotiation if there is no give and take. You would normally you should aim to create courteous and constructive interaction that is a win-win for both parties. So definitely, if you are in a negotiation process with a third party or an individual, you both have to agree to something. So it is really important that you have a good communication and you're good at convincing people to agree to you. Ideally, a successful negotiation is where you can make concessions that mean little to you while giving something to the other party that means a lot to them. Your approach should foster goodwill regardless of the difference in interests. Well, as I mentioned earlier, it really depends on what is your aim when you get into that negotiation. So, for most of us, whenever we just graduated, this is really the time that we start to experience negotiation. So when you apply for a job, that is another example that you will somehow get into a negotiation with. Perhaps the first person will be the person who's interviewing you. So you have to convince them to hire you. And you have to highlight whatever it is that you can offer to them so that in a way that other party will be convinced to agree to hire you. And negotiable instrument then comes into place whenever that person who hired you will present you with a job contract. So this contract then will become binding. You'll have to agree as well to their terms and conditions. Then sign everything because that is the way to legalize an agreement. So there are so many things that we do in life that is already doing this negotiation. We always negotiate with something, even riding on a jeepney. Next slide then. This is a little bit tricky really in terms of how would you approach a negotiation. You have to choose a strategy. You may wish to consider the issue being negotiated. There are 3 approaches to negotiation: hard, soft, and principled negotiation. Many experts consider the third option, which is principled negotiation, to be best practice. When we say that it involves integrity, honesty, and really like good intention. I would normally, like when you go to a mall, sometimes you will see there people selling blender. These people really almost shouting just to convince the onlookers to buy that blender. So that's what I envision, the hard selling way. In that way you buy their product. But the other method which is suggested, mostly recommended, is when there is integrity and honesty involved when you negotiate something. Going back to my example earlier, when you apply for a job, you convince the HR person to hire you. They will ask you, can you do this? Are you very good at understanding computers, coding? If you are trying to apply for something that is in the IT field, of course, you will say yes, you're master at it. In that way, you can convince them to have an agreement, a job agreement with you. So it is preferred, but in reality, we always know that there are hidden clauses, and this is something that we need to watch out for. If in the future you may be put in the position where you have to sign a contract. So win-win outcome by separating the people from problem, focusing on interest, not position, generating a variety of options before setting on an agreement, and basing the agreement on an objective criteria. So a lot of business negotiation really use this because in business, it is important that you have credibility. So let's say you go to you're trying to start a business, like a small business, maybe a milk tea business, because that's common now. You go to a building and you're trying to rent a space there. So you always have to be honest with the owner and be upfront and be clear on your intention as to what you're going to do, because I understand there are some instances where let's say some of the building owners will not allow you to change something in their property. Like maybe you cannot put your own bathroom in your stall, or you cannot put your own design in your store. So they will always have that limitation. So you have to honor whatever it is that they want if you want them to agree with you.